name is Keith Graves, and I'm your worship associate this morning. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 361, Make Your Choice and Come In Your Praise.
Service in Fellowship Hall for some great food and great company. Second, this Saturday, family game night, everybody is invited from 5:30 to 9 o'clock. It's a potluck, bring something to eat. If you have questions, contact Sharon. For the most up-to-date information on these topics and others, please refer to our weekly e-newsletter and check our website frequently. And please join us for conversation and potluck after the service. If you are present in the sanctuary, please join us for coffee and conversation in Fellowship Hall and potluck. If you're watching the live stream, the link for our Zoom coffee hour can be found in the Saturday reminder in your email. If you're just joining us and would like to receive our weekly e-news, please email us at uucroton@gmail.com with your name, and we'll make sure you're added to our e-news list. Also, please remember to silence your cell phones at this time. And once again, we welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Hudson Valley.
Our guest minister this Sunday is Reverend Michael Tino. They are part of the lead ministry team at the Church of the Larger Fellowship, our UU congregation without borders or walls. CLF's membership includes some 1,800 incarcerated Unitarian Universalists. For 15 years, Michael served as the minister of our sibling congregation in Mount Kisco, and they are delighted to return regularly to UUCHV. They live in Peekskill with their husband and daughter.
So glad to be back amongst you, beloved. We gather in worship with these words from David C. Cole. We come to this time and this place to rediscover the wondrous gift of free religious community, to renew our faith in the holiness, goodness, and beauty of life, to reaffirm the way of the open mind and the full heart, to rekindle the flame of memory and hope, and to reclaim the vision of an earth made fair with all her people one. Welcome to worship.
Today's chalice lighting words are from Deborah Faulkner. The chalice lit in our midst is a symbol of our liberal faith, a faith built on the foundations of freedom, reason, and welcome. A faith sustained by acts of kindness and justice, a faith that envisions a world flourishing with equality for all people, a faith that demands the living out of goodness, a faith that requires thoughtfulness, a faith of wholeness. This tiny flame is the symbol of the spark of all this within each of us. Now, please join me in saying our unison affirmation. The words are in your order of service. Inspired by love, our mission is to seek our true nature, connect deeply and openly, and act for justice.
As we finish the month of April, this Earth Month, I thought I would ground what we are going to be exploring today in a little bit of the natural world. How many of you have ever experienced a butterfly kit, where you get caterpillars in the mail and put them in this little mesh house and watch them as they turn into butterflies? Okay, well, this story involves one of those, and it's a story first told to me by my dear friend, the Reverend Lynn Gardner. And Lynn, you see, used to run a preschool. And every spring, Lynn would order one of these kits. And in the mail would arrive a little box with the tiniest little caterpillars that you ever did see, and a little box with a container of food. And she would put them in this mesh house with some sticks and leaves just to give them shade and to allow them to crawl on things. And folks would watch them. The caterpillars would crawl around and they would eat and grow and eat and grow. And pretty soon they were not the tiniest little caterpillars you ever did see. They were pretty big, fat caterpillars. And when the children from her preschool went home at night, Lynn brought a butterfly house into her office. So she did her end of the day paperwork and everything that she had to do. She liked to watch the caterpillars. And so she would sit there and watch the caterpillars. And they were much more interesting than her paperwork. So sometimes she would watch the caterpillars for a long time. And she would watch each caterpillar as they crawled around. And she would watch them crawl up the sticks and down the sticks, and then crawl up the sticks and down the sticks, until at some point, most of the caterpillars would crawl up the stick and grab onto that stick with some set of their legs and fling their entire body off the stick so that they were just hanging there. When they had done that really scary thing of flinging their entire self off the stick, they could turn into a chrysalis. And inside that chrysalis, they could become a butterfly. And 2 weeks later, the butterfly would emerge, and the children would delight as they released them into the garden. But these caterpillars, they were not all on the same schedule. So, some of them would crawl up the sticks, grab on and fling themselves off right away. And some of them would just crawl up the stick and down the stick for days and days and days. Now, as I said, most of those caterpillars summoned up whatever they had to in their little caterpillar cells to fling themselves off of that stick and hang there and become a beautiful butterfly. And some of them did not. And this is the sad part of the story, is what do you think happened to the caterpillars that didn't do that? They dried up at the bottom of the little butterfly enclosure, and they never got to be butterflies. Sometimes the metaphors that we use are subtle. And sometimes they are not. And this is one of those times, when the metaphor simply is not that subtle. That all of us have to take the leap to change. And if we don't, we wind up dust. I think our choir is going to sing that. And make us all happy.
Good morning. I'm Bernie Croft, and it was a joy to collaborate with Sherry Brown, Joanne Hefner, and Terry Luton on this year's pledge drive. We'd like to thank everyone who has returned their pledge card. So far, 25 pledge cards have been returned for a total of $122,044. Check out the flowers on the pledge drive flower mural. We are filled with gratitude for the generosity and dedication of our members and friends as we grow our loving space. We'd also like to thank Heather Hewitt, Megan Benton, and Betsy Tomic for their wonderful testimonials on how they find our congregation inclusive, inspiring, and enlightening. For those who have not yet returned their pledge cards will be available at the potluck after service. They're on the welcome table. We will be reaching out to those who have not yet pledged. Today marks the end of the pledge drive. We invite all of you to join us in celebrating the conclusion of the pledge drive to a potluck meal in the fellowship hall after the service. Thank you.
Let us now bear witness to the joys and sorrows experienced in our community. I light this first candle for all the suffering and conflicts in the world, in Gaza and Israel and South Sudan, Yemen and Ukraine, and so many other places. Let's have a moment of silence for all those aching in the wider world. As our sorrows are real, so are our joys. I light the second candle for all care, kindness, and compassion unfolding among friends, family, and strangers in the world right now, in cities, towns, and villages. We are grateful for the love shared. As we hold and honor the sorrows and joys of the wider world, so do we also have personal joys and sorrows. Now is the time for our personal joys and sorrows. If you have a brief yet personally significant joy or sorrow that you are willing to share, please come up to the microphone and speak loudly so that everyone, including the people watching at home, can hear you. If you would prefer only to have a candle lit without speaking, please just stand or raise your hand and I will light a candle for you.
Hi, I'm Nora, but the joy and sorrow that I am going to relate is the Reverend Daniel. As we all know, Reverend Daniel was expecting a child in July, and that child came a lot sooner than expected. His wife went to labor unexpectedly this past week in San Francisco, actually on the plane, on her way to San Francisco. Baby, she had an emergency C-section, baby was born, was rushed into neonatal intensive care. Reverend Daniel is out there with his wife and his son at the present time. Baby is on oxygen, will probably be in intensive care for the next 3 months so that he can catch up to what he should have been with his little birthday. So I want everybody to hold Reverend Daniel and his family in your hearts and your prayers for strength, for love, for our support. Thanks.
But I have a great joy, actually the biggest joy I've ever shared with you. That was March September and I was working with Reverend Daniel on a grant application that was awarded to us last week from the Presbyterian Hospital. It's a 3-year grant, and we are bringing a program for LGBTQIA+. It's a social event once a month from October to June for 3 years. It's modeled on one that exists at the Rock, and we have wonderful support tonight from the Rock and other folks in the community. And I'm just going to talk to all of you about this we work together. That will be a big leap forward for our congregation regionally.
Good morning, please. I was very hoping to have really like this candle. It was a home defense coat, unfortunately. This candle is for my husband's nephew's family, who lost their 18-year-old to cancer.
We also acknowledge all the unspoken joys and sorrows held within the sanctuary of our hearts, and all those people who have yet to find a spiritual home willing to share their joys and sorrows.
I invite you to join me for a moment, connecting with the center of yourself. However it is that you need to move or stay still, breathe, whatever it is at your deepest center. As we breathe together, let us know that our breath connects us to all of the beings of this world, all of the people of this world, all those who have ever been, and all those yet to be. As we breathe together, we breathe in the joys of this community, the joys that lift us up. We breathe out love. We breathe in those joys. We breathe out love. Love that surrounds the people that we know who are struggling, who are grieving, who are afraid. Love that surrounds the people that we do not know, who are struggling, who are grieving, who are afraid. Love that reaches beyond these walls, through our community, through our world, across the country, to little John and Joseph, we hold in our hearts. The families who are mourning right now. Love that reaches through walls and across borders, all around the world, and right back to this space. May you know that you are held in the midst of this great life. Amen.
Today's reading is our 6 objectives, Article 2 from the 1961 UUA bylaws. In accordance with these corporate purposes, the members of the Unitarian Universalist Association, dedicated to the principles of free faith, unite in seeking 1. To strengthen one another in a free and disciplined search for truth as the foundation of our religious fellowship. 2. To cherish and spread the universal truths taught by the great prophets and teachers of humanity in every age and tradition, immemorially summarized in the Judeo-Christian heritage as love to God and love to man. 3. To affirm, defend, and promote the supreme worth of every human personality, the dignity of man, and the use of the democratic method in human relationships. 4. To implement our vision of one world by striving for a world community founded on ideals of brotherhood, justice, and peace. 5. To serve the needs of member churches and fellowships, to organize new churches and fellowships, and to extend and strengthen liberal religion. And 6. To encourage cooperation with men of goodwill in every land. Now, please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing our next hymn, number 131 in your great hymnal, Love Will Guide Us.
On the road
with the world's most boring reading from the 1961 Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws. Unitarian Universalism, this religion that we claim, is a living tradition. Right there on the cover of your gray hymnals, singing the living tradition we call our main hymnal. What does it mean to be a living tradition? It means that we proclaim that our sources of inspiration are neither fixed nor sealed. That we, as a faith, say that we are always open to learning more and to doing better, as individuals, as congregations, and as a faith in its entirety. And this is a theological stance that we take, a profound and important theological stance. It's grounded in hundreds of years of Unitarian Universalist and Unitarian Universalist history. We can look back, if we want, to William Ellery Channing, one of the founders of American Unitarianism, who believed that the highest power of humanity was what he called self-culture. Like agriculture is the growth of plants, self-culture is the growth of the human. Now, William Ellery Channing was really only concerned with growth for year to year. But we know today that we grow in ways that don't involve only our head. We grow emotionally, and we grow relationally, and we grow. And that, he said, is the highest power of humanity. We can look to our 19th century heritage, when Unitarians throughout the United States proclaimed as one of their touchstones the progress of mankind onward and upward forever. Now, maybe they missed that humanity was not just men. Maybe they missed that our progress was not in fact linear, that had dips and starts. But we did believe that we could move forward together and make progress. We can also look to 20th century process theology, one of the schools of theology that I find most resonant in my own spiritual journey. In process theology, we are taught that every being in the universe, you and me and the trees and the animals, every being in the universe is constantly in the process of becoming something new. You are not the same as you were when you came in here this morning. You have learned things, you have felt things, you have seen things, you have made connections, and those connections are mirrored in connections made in your brain, and you cannot unmake them. You will not be the same at the end of this service as you are right now. We are all constantly becoming something new. Process theology is famously summed up by science fiction fantasy writer Octavia Butler, who, in imagining a dystopian future that actually starts this year, you can't make that up. She imagined a resistance based on spirituality, a resistance that whose motto involved this quote. They said, "All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. We are all constantly changing." And that is an intimate and intricate, inherent part of Unitarian Universalism. Unitarian Universalist historian and scholar of Black Unitarian Universalism, Mark Morrison Reed, writes this with respect to our progress on racial justice through the years. Again, a non-linear process. Mark Morrison Reed writes, "Change will come whether we work for and celebrate it, or distrust and resist it, or simply wait. Our history says it will come whether we want it or not. And for that, we can be thankful. As a faith, we have committed ourselves to be open to change, even when that change is difficult. And sometimes it is. Sometimes that change involves grabbing whatever we have near us with all of our might and flinging our entire faith-based selves off of whatever we are holding onto, so that we might experience metamorphosis. Which brings us to Article 2 of the bylaws of the Unitarian Universalist Association, the very, very driest way of saying the things that we as Unitarian Universalist congregations affirm hold us together as Unitarian Universalists. Currently, Article 2 of the UUA bylaws contains the 7 principles and 6 sources of Unitarian Universalism. For some of us, the language in those principles and sources have been groundbreaking and life-saving. For some of us, coming into a congregation that proclaimed from day one that each of us has inherent worth and dignity saved us. Literally, not figuratively, not at some future date right now, it saved us. That we were told that everyone around us understood us to be worthy of love. We, however, commit ourselves, we require ourselves, in fact, to review those words at least every 15 years, to impanel a commission whose job it is to see what we have learned in those intervening years and whether our core statements reflect that. Our language has changed a lot since 1961, since the language that Keith read to you. It is easy to hear dated, stilted language in those 1961 objectives. They weren't principles, they were just objectives. With 63 years of learning and experience, we can read or hear those words and understand exactly why a commission in 1984 proposed the language of the principles and sources. The language that we as a faith adopted in 1985, and that has only been modified twice in the last 40 years. And yet, the 1961 language, very much language of its time, very much dated, contains some things that were pretty groundbreaking for a religious organization in 1961. And just because they're not groundbreaking today, doesn't mean that we shouldn't realize that. Similarly, our principles, as we know them, as we hang in lobbies and sometimes print on the back of the order of service, we print the principles on the back of the order of service, which is fun to me. It's great. I mean, I think it's great because it doesn't codify them in some way. Those principles have served us well since 1985. I minister, as you've heard, and as you've heard from me, if you've been here on Sundays that I've been here before, to now over 1,800 incarcerated Unitarian Universalists. And every day that we conduct that ministry, we hear from those folks how desperately they need the message that they have inherent worth and dignity. How desperately they need it and how much it saves their lives. Every time they get a newsletter from us saying, you are worthy of love. It helps them go on another day. In the last 40 years, our principles have asked us to think and learn and grow. They have fed us and they have nurtured us. And in that time, they have also sometimes been weaponized, and marginalized, and hurt people. And yes, I believe they have done so much good that we need to recognize them in the fullness of history, and not just the warm part of our hearts in which they live. Our insistence rooted in those 1961 objectives that there is one democratic process, the democratic process, that we affirm and use in all of our congregations has led us to often embrace a democratic process that leaves voices out, that insists on marching through the business using Robert's Rules of Order to a tidy conclusion in a timely manner, a process that often stifles dissent and leaves out the marginalized among us. Our embrace of the right of conscience has time and again been misused. And it is a misuse, but it has time and again been misused to insist that we can hold on to beliefs that label others as inferior or other just because they are our beliefs and we have the right to believe them. We have engaged time and again in cultural misappropriation. I believe due in large part to the lack of any power analysis in the sources of our faith. Our sources that claim that we freely draw from the world's religions have encouraged Unitarian Universalists of privilege to pick and choose the things that we like from the religions of other cultures. And even that notion of inherent worth, that notion that has saved so many of us, even that notion of inherent worth has been troubled by those among us whose ancestors were bought and sold as slaves, whose worth was assigned in dollars as property. It has been troubled and labeled maybe something we should rethink how we phrase. We have also, on and off for the last 40 years, recognized that those principles were missing some things. Earth-centered traditions were added to our sources in 1987. The first thing we realized was missing. It took 2 years of debate over whether people with pagan theologies were actually welcome in our congregations. This debate happened in 1987. It was not 1777 or 1847. It was 1987 that we had that debate, and thankfully we voted yes. The most sung word in our hymnal is not in our principles. If you take all of the hymns in our hymnal and put them in a word cloud, what do you think the most sung word in our hymnal is? That is love. The most sung word in our hymnal is love. It does not appear in our principles at all. Neither does a commitment to anti-oppression. A commitment that was asked to be added by the people who wrote the principle and presented it to us. And the writing and passage initial passage of that 8th principle is what spurred the commission that has currently been doing work to ask us to revise and rethink the way we center ourselves as a faith. This year, Unitarian Universalists have the opportunity to change things. An opportunity to keep what is good and to transform what is not so good. To add some things that are missing and to realize that what we add will not be perfect and will need to be changed at some point in the future. It's a big change. It's a big change replacing our principles and sources with a set of values and covenant and inspirations. It's a big change that has led to a lot of grief and anxiety. And maybe you have expressed some of that grief and anxiety. Maybe you have been privy to the ways in which some of that grief and anxiety have been expressed from people who are so tied to who we have been that they cannot imagine what we might become if only we took the risk to transform ourselves. And some of that reaction has contained a lot of misinformation. So if you haven't heard it yet, I want to warn you that a lot of misinformation is out there. And I can't address all of the misinformation that's out there, so I want to just talk about the process by which we came to this. The words that will be voted on at the UUA's General Assembly in June, that hopefully you will empower delegates from your congregation to vote on in June, did not emerge from a vacuum. They were not imposed by some authority, as if our very anti-authoritarian faith has such a thing, who could do such a thing. The Article 2 Study Commission was charged by the UA Board in response to a vote of the delegates of the General Assembly. And that study commission took 2 years to listen to Unitarian Universalists. They interviewed hundreds and hundreds of individual people, hundreds of congregations. They put out surveys and got the responses from thousands of Unitarian Universalists. And we took all of that information and they digested and read every bit of it. They interviewed congregations, they interviewed stakeholder groups in our faith, and they did a lot. In 2022, at the General Assembly of Portland, we spent the entire business portion of that General Assembly in conversations about the ideas that had come up in all of those surveys and interviews. The thousands of delegates who attended that General Assembly spent hours and hours in conversation, took notes on their conversation, and gave those notes back to the commission, who created them into their thinking. And the result was a set of 7 values, which are on the cover of the order of service this week. A set of 7 values, each of which comes with not only an explanation of its place in our faith, but also a covenant of how we will put the value into action. Love is at the center of these values, on purpose, purposefully placed in the center, to guide everything that we do. Surrounded by interdependence, justice, equity, generosity, pluralism, and transformation. I guarantee you that your favorite phrases from the 7 principles and the proposed 8th principle are in there somehow. This is not like we're getting rid of one thing and replacing it with something new that's part of the misinformation that's out there. I guarantee you that your favorite phrases are deeply embedded in this work. These values call on us to practice mutual accountability, build relationships of care and respect, work for the repair of harm, create communities in which all of our diversity is celebrated, dismantle oppression, and sustain accessible and inclusive communities. These values and the covenant that is attached to them ask us to do a lot of work, the work that is our faith in 2024, the work that has become what Unitarian Universalism is centered on: personal work, congregational work, and societal work. They call on us to keep changing, to keep learning, to keep growing, to keep understanding our world in new ways as new information comes to us. And so the value of transformation is the only one of these that I would read to you in its entirety. I hope that you will take the time to go online and find them and read them and digest them and note the beauty in them, note what has been kept, note what has been added, note what has been changed. Here's what the value of transformation says. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. Wow, what a phrase. Never complete, never perfect. We are a living tradition that responds to the world in which we live. A living tradition that takes the risk to grow into something new. A living tradition that embraces change, in part because there is really no other choice. Change is happening and will happen, whether we embrace it or not. We are always changing. May that be embraced as a blessing. invite you to rise in body or in spirit now. Join us in hymn number 1008, in the Teal hymnal, which we will sing as when our heart is in a loving space.
Each week, we make an offering from the bounty we are blessed to enjoy. We do this in the spirit of love and generosity, aware that we have benefited from those who have gone before, those that in their turn gave generously. Our offering goes to support the work of love and justice undertaken by this community. Today, our offering will also be shared with, share our plate with SBCA, a no-bill 501c3 not-for-profit animal welfare organization dedicated to saving homeless, abused, and abandoned animals and protecting animals. For more information, please visit the website sbcawestchester.org. You can make your donation in several ways. If present in the sanctuary, you may give cash or a check in the offering plate as it comes by. From your homes, you can make your donation via credit card or PayPal using the links provided in the e-newsletter, or by visiting our website, UUCHV.org. Or if you prefer, you may always send a check. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
I invite you to take a look at the lyrics at the bottom and sort of familiarize yourself with the melody.
The words are in your order of service.
We take these gifts and the work of our hands and hearts, be empowered to always stand for as a community of faith.
Now please join me. Now please join me in extinguishing the chalice. The words are in your order of service.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
The benediction comes from Barbara Peskin, who reminds us, because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. And we carry that dream forth into the world until we leave.
So this is a great round. Yeah. And the hardest part is the last line. All through the night, safe till morning. Have y'all ever seen that line? Yeah. All through the night, safe till morning light. So the first two lines are the first part, and so when one group starts singing Golden Sun, that's when the second part would come in. So let's just sing it once all the way through, and then could we have, I guess, the women on this side, the women on this side, and perhaps the men as group 3? 4, pick whatever you want to go with.